Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest, most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today with me is Jim Bartolomea, SVP of ClickUp. Now, Jim, can you tell us a little bit about what ClickUp does?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Dr. Gleb. So yes, ClickUp is in a space what we like to call collaborative work management. So we actually make it easier for workers and companies and teams to get their work done all in one place. And so we have a platform that actually, eliminates the need for a lot of other tools, software tools that companies have. You can do almost everything you need right in the ClickUp platform. That's kind of the elevator pitch. There's a lot to it, but that's what we do.
Excellent. And can you tell me, so you've been observing how teams use ClickUp before the pandemic and during the pandemic, where you have this hybrid work and remote work. How has productivity changed? How has people's perspective on productivity changed in this era of hybrid work and remote work compared to in-office work?
Yes. So I think, it's been very interesting to see, particularly the narrative change. I'll tie back to a couple things. So I think,
Sure.
of course, COVID is a big part of this, right? And so whereas before we were all together, we were seeing the work that was getting done. As we've moved into what was, in many cases, a fully remote environment or now a hybrid environment.
Yep.
I think what's happening is, and with the macroeconomic headwinds, what's happening is leaders, companies are asking, are our employees productive, right? In a way that I don't think we ever have before. And
Sure.
so, one of the things that we think about a lot here is, how productive are our employees? How are we measuring that? Those sorts of things. So I think that's been the big shift is I don't know that I heard this topic come up much pre-COVID. And now it seems to be very much top of mind, especially in an environment, at least in the tech space, where everyone's so focused on efficiency. Productivity is top of mind.
Yeah. And so productivity is top of mind for tech and for others. There's a difference between the amount of work that you put in and the outcomes that you get. So previously in the office, unfortunately, the value of productivity was mainly on face time. How much time did you spend in the office? So the time that you spent working. Now managers can't actually see their employees when they're working remotely. And so what Microsoft research found, there's productivity paranoia, where managers are worried about whether their workers are being productive. Can you speak to the difference in productivity between outcomes and the inputs, the activity, the work time that employees are putting into the work versus the kind of outcomes that they're getting?
I think you hit on the biggest thing that worries me about productivity as a topic is we care about activity and not outcomes. And so, one of the things that I think every organization needs to start with is defining what does productivity mean in your organization. And that can be very different depending on the type of role you do, the type of organization you sit in. But if there isn't a dialogue between employees and managers, leaders and managers around what is productivity, then how are we ever going to hold people accountable to a productivity measure? So that's really, for me, the crux of the situation is defining productivity.
And what have you found as, so you're the people leader at ClickUp, how have you defined productivity at ClickUp?
I guess that depends on the group, of course. For my team, I'll speak for my team, and then maybe I'll speak about our engineering team. For my team, we have a very well established set of OKRs that we have established as a group. We look at quarter by quarter. We then review those at the end of each quarter. And if it isn't in the goals, then it might not be you being productive. Of course, there are things outside of goals all the time, right? But these are the main things that I'm going to look at to make sure you're being productive. Now, a people team's interesting because we have, not as many concrete measures as maybe like a customer support organization or an engineering organization. So one of the things we've been doing, for instance, in our technical organization is we look at checked in code. We look at bugs found and repaired. We try and find as many objective measures of things that we care about and say, this is a measure of productivity for us. Again, so not just activity for the sake of activity, but activity that is an outcome or a result we want.
Excellent. Now, when we're thinking about productivity, we want to improve it, not simply measure it. So what are good strategies to improve productivity, keeping in mind both hybrid teams, remote teams, in-office teams?
Yeah, so I think, I'll start with what I just hit on, which is I think, define and then set goals. That's a really big part of this, of course. But then also, another thing that you can do is you can really reinforce productivity, right? Through recognition programs, rewards programs, things of that nature, right? And so you really create a culture where, okay, this is what productivity means. And if I hit that productivity measure, this is what I get, right? So it's, it's kind of basic human nature stuff. And, there's a number of studies out there that just show that job satisfaction goes up significantly when people feel like they are being productive, right? And so because also another study shows that, the consensus on what productivity is differs between managers and employees. Then if you define it and people achieve it, you're going to get happier employees. So that's really a big part of what we're trying to do here and what I think every organization should be thinking of in terms of employee experience.
Yeah, it's really important. I'm actually doing a retreat for one of my clients, and a big topic of conversation is how do you define productivity, especially this difference between how do employees and leaders define productivity. And I think one of the big challenges that I see is there's a difference between leaders who define productivity as productivity by a team versus employees who define it as individual productivity. So can we talk a little bit about your perspective on the difference between individual productivity versus team productivity and what that involves?
Yeah, that's a great call out. And it is a dynamic that exists. So, when we talk about individual and team productivity, what you want to build, again, when you think about defining this and then establishing goals around it is, how are we making sure that the individual productivity measures then ladder up to the team productivity goals, right? So if, let's go back to that engineering example, right? If the team goal is to ship a feature, then what are the individual productivity metrics? Again, going back to code checked in, quality, bugs, what are the individual metrics that will ladder up to achieving shipping that feature, right? So that is the way that we think about it here. And again, a really good OKR, goal, KPI, I don't care what you call the process, right? It could be any number of different ways that you do that. But that ladder up method is going to be so important to make sure at the individual level, people are focused on the right things to drive organizational outcomes.
Now, let's talk about this team productivity and collaboration for a little bit. Now, we'll talk about in-office versus remote. What kind of collaboration techniques, abilities are important for teams that are working remotely, whether they're full-time remote or they're hybrid? During the time that they're working remotely, what kind of collaboration techniques are important for them to be productive?
Yeah. So if we think about a fully remote team, Zoom, which we're doing right now, and is great, but it can't be everything. I think any fully remote organization needs to have asynchronous tools. And that could be a lot of different things, not just a platform like ours, but asynchronous tools that work well for their organization, right? Because you're not always going to be on Zoom. So I think when we think about fully remote teams, it's a combination of tools, and then it is a combination of this type of interface. And if an organization is subscribed to it, which we are, we're about 70% remote, we're still subscribed to the idea that bringing people together for certain moments or events that matter is an important part of our strategy. But if you're fully remote and you say, hey, we never bring anyone together, then I would start with tools. And I would obviously, say, hey, you still can't replace a meeting and live voice and body language.
Yeah, live voice and body language are valuable. You can also do them asynchronously. So I recommend to my clients that whatever you can do asynchronously, you should try to do that, including communicating nuanced messages with live voice, video, and so on. Record it, of course.
I'm so glad you called that out, Dr. Gleb. One of the things that I've been pushing my team on lately, and this is actually something I've been talking to a lot of people leaders about, is I use a lot of voice notes within our platform, within Slack. Sometimes I'll even video record myself because I want people to understand the context and the tone of what I'm trying to say. And particularly when it's like a harder message, I don't, sometimes the written word can come across in a way that you don't want. And if they can hear the inflections of our voice or our body language, I love that you called that out. Yet you don't have to get on a meeting to deliver still something in your voice or the tone that you want.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk a little bit about the physical office. So you're 70% remote. That means you're 30% in office. What does the modern office look like in terms of productivity and collaboration? Because with my clients, what we work on is to make sure that the office is used for the best purpose it is served for. And that, for the large majority of people, is collaboration. So collaborative activities, whereas in person, whereas in the home activities, remote work activities are really best done for individual tasks, whether it's programming, writing, whatever it might be, asynchronous communication, video conference calls. But the office is really for collaborative tasks, socializing, mentoring, those kind of nuanced conversations. That's what the office is best for. That's what my clients are finding. So how do you create an office that's a good fit for those activities?
Yeah, you nailed it, by the way. I love the way you broke it down. It's mainly my talk track on this, almost exactly what you said. And I love the idea of like, you should do a lot of focused work, and you can do that at home because that's a great place to do focused work. But when you come into the office, it does come with collaboration and interfacing with others. If you're going to use that time to bring people together, let's do it that way. So we've been experimenting with what the new physical office should look like in an environment like this. We've eliminated a ton of workstations because when you are coming in, there are people who come in for our 30% that live near an office. There are people who come in to work every day. That's fair. That's their, we always say, hey, you can do that. But we don't even have close to enough workstations for all the people that we have in the area where we have offices. So we've eliminated a lot of workstations, and we've indexed more on collaborative team spaces, collaborative technology. There are some really incredible video whiteboarding solutions and things of that nature now. We're experimenting with those. And then also the one of the bigger things that we're looking for, we're looking at our space right now and saying, okay, is this the right space for us? Should we change? Is a learning and gathering space for groups. And what does that look like? The way we're running it right now, it's less than ideal. We hold our all hands and our training sessions and our what we call on-site offsites for teams that we bring in our our cafe or our cafeteria. That's less than ideal. If we could create something from scratch, what would that space look like? That's something I'm really excited about, and we're looking to do here in the future. So, to sum up where I think the future of workspaces go, in the type of environment we're talking about, it's a lot less workspaces, a lot more collaborative areas with the technology to support that collaboration. And because you're still going to have remote people usually in those collaborative sessions, right? And then also some sort of dedicated space for training, large group gatherings, things of that nature.
Excellent. Since you're talking about the future, let's wrap up with a question about the future. What do you see as the future of collaboration looking like in our world? We have the differences between hybrid, remote, fully in office, and productivity. What's your vision on what collaboration will look like in the next several years?
Yeah, I've hit on this as we've talked here, but to sum it all up, I personally, and this is just my belief, I do still think that bringing people together and how often that is and where and in what type of meeting really depends on the organization. But I still believe that even in the future, you cannot replace that type of collaboration. And so the future will look like a lot of asynchronous work, right? Less, hopefully, of these Zoom meetings. I think COVID got us into a habit of like Zoom. And it is great and we still need it, but it'll hopefully be a lot less of that because it will be supplemented by asynchronous work. And the third leg of that stool is those moments that matter, bringing people together for those very intentional collaboration, teamwork, just important bonding moments and innovation moments as teams.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jim. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with our audience.
Absolutely. This is great. Is there anything else I can answer, Dr. Gleb, before we finish up?
No, this is great. And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and make sure to leave a review. It really helps others discover the show and helps us improve the show. All right, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.